Did Harry and Meghan just discover that the game they thought they had escaped is still being played without them, and worse, that they might already be losing it? Because behind the polished smiles, carefully staged appearances, and endless declarations of independence, a rumor has exploded through royal circles that has reportedly sent shockwaves all the way from Westminster to Montecito. Not a public vote, not an official announcement, not even a dramatic palace statement. Something far more dangerous. A quiet political arrangement. A secret Westminster deal that insiders claim may have already secured enough support to push a controversial royal reform further than anyone expected. And if those whispers are true, Harry and Meghan may be staring at the biggest threat they have faced since walking away from royal life.
William has finally snapped. Enough is enough. He has told friends he will strip Meghan Markle of the HRH title. King Charles is turning a blind eye, but King William won't.
For years, the Sussexes operated as though the storm would eventually pass. Every controversy came and went. Every criticism faded. Every prediction that they would lose influence somehow failed to materialize. They survived interviews. They survived documentaries. They survived memoirs. They survived public backlash. They survived family feuds. But this feels different because family drama can be managed. Political momentum cannot. The rumors spreading through London are not centered around palace courtiers anymore. They are not coming from anonymous royal aides or tabloid commentators. Instead, attention has shifted toward Westminster itself, where conversations are allegedly happening behind closed doors between lawmakers who rarely agree on anything. And that is exactly what has people talking. When political rivals suddenly start finding common ground, experienced observers know something unusual is happening.
I did think it would happen. If Harry and Meghan are watching, they should be incredibly concerned, because if it's this simple to take away Prince Andrew's titles, one day it could be this easy to take away Harry and Meghan's title.
The alleged deal itself remains hidden from public view. Nobody has produced documents. Nobody has officially confirmed anything. Yet the whispers keep growing louder. Certain lawmakers reportedly began changing their tone almost simultaneously. Others, who previously remained silent, suddenly appeared willing to discuss royal accountability. Some observers claim private discussions have been taking place for months. Coincidence? Maybe, but inside royal gossip circles, nobody seems to believe in coincidence anymore. The terrifying possibility for Harry and Meghan isn't necessarily that a vote happens tomorrow. It's that the outcome may already be taking shape before the public even knows the full details. That possibility alone has reportedly triggered fresh anxiety among people connected to the Sussex operation, because influence works differently in politics than it does in Hollywood. In California, perception creates momentum. In Westminster, momentum creates outcomes. And once enough people quietly commit to a direction, reversing it becomes almost impossible. That's what makes this story feel so explosive. The Sussex brand has always depended on one critical assumption: that despite every controversy, despite every headline, despite every feud, the connection to royalty would remain permanently attached to their public identity.
Harry, Meghan Markle, and their children could be set to lose their royal title.
Now imagine discovering that assumption might no longer be guaranteed. Imagine realizing that conversations are happening in rooms where you have no influence, no allies, and no control. Suddenly the confidence disappears. Suddenly, every headline feels dangerous. Suddenly, every old controversy comes back to life. The timing couldn't be worse. Harry and Meghan have spent years building a new life based on their unique position between celebrity culture and royal mystique. They weren't ordinary celebrities. They weren't active royals. They existed in a space nobody else occupied. That uniqueness became their greatest asset. But what happens if that asset starts looking vulnerable? What happens when business partners begin asking difficult questions? What happens when investors wonder whether the royal connection that generated attention might eventually become weaker? Those are the questions reportedly causing sleepless nights. Because whether people love them or hate them, one fact remains impossible to ignore: the Sussex title became part of the brand, and brands hate uncertainty. Meanwhile, another fascinating detail has emerged from the growing speculation. Some insiders claim the strongest support for these discussions isn't necessarily coming from traditional royal loyalists. It's reportedly coming from people who believe modern institutions need modern accountability. That argument changes everything. Suddenly, the debate stops being about Harry. It stops being about Meghan. It stops being about old family grievances. Instead, it becomes a debate about principles. And once a debate becomes ideological rather than personal, it gains a life of its own. That's exactly why the atmosphere feels increasingly tense, because nobody knows where it ends. Behind palace walls, there is reportedly another layer to this mystery: a growing belief that certain certain powerful figures have stopped trying to repair relationships altogether. For years, reconciliation remained the official fantasy. Every Christmas invitation, every family gathering, every carefully worded statement. The idea that somehow, someday, the wounds would heal. But lately, that fantasy appears to be fading. And as it fades, practical calculations seem to be replacing emotional ones. The monarchy isn't thinking about yesterday. It's thinking about the next 20 years. It's thinking about succession. It's thinking about stability. It's thinking about survival. And that shift changes the entire equation. Because when institutions start focusing on survival, personal feelings become secondary. Rumors now suggest that some strategists view the current moment as a rare opportunity to redraw boundaries that have remained untouched for generations. If true, Harry and Meghan may have unintentionally become the center of a much larger transformation. Not because they planned it, not because they wanted it, but because history has a habit of choosing unexpected symbols. And right now, whispers across Westminster suggest the Sussexes may be becoming exactly that. The most unsettling part of this entire story is that nobody seems entirely sure where the supposed deal originated. Every rumor points somewhere different. Some whispers blame frustrated lawmakers. Others point toward influential advisors. A few even suggest that figures connected to the future direction of the monarchy quietly encouraged conversations long before the public became aware of them. Whatever the truth may be, one thing appears increasingly obvious. The atmosphere around Harry and Meghan has changed dramatically. The same establishment that once treated them as a temporary headache now seems to be viewing them as a long-term constitutional question, and that is a far more dangerous position to occupy. A scandal eventually fades. A constitutional question does not. That's why reports of frantic discussions inside Montecito have become such a fascinating part of the narrative. According to circulating rumors, advisors are allegedly reviewing every possible scenario. Public relations experts, legal consultants, brand strategists, crisis planners, everybody examining what happens if the conversation surrounding royal status becomes more serious than anyone previously expected. Because beneath all the glamour and celebrity headlines sits a brutal reality. The Sussex identity became one of the most valuable brands in the world, not simply because of Harry, not simply because of Meghan, but because together they represented something unique. Royalty outside the palace gates, insiders without official duties, rebels who still carried the world's most recognizable family connection. That formula generated attention everywhere. Streaming platforms wanted it, publishers wanted it, interviewers wanted it, audiences wanted it. Now imagine the uncertainty if that formula suddenly looks unstable. Every future project becomes harder to predict. Every negotiation becomes more complicated. Every headline becomes more dangerous. And that's exactly why the rumors of panic refuse to disappear. Meanwhile, back in Britain, another fascinating shift appears to be unfolding. Public discussion has reportedly become less emotional and more strategic. The argument is no longer focused on whether people personally like Harry and Meghan. Instead, the conversation increasingly revolves around what role titles should play in a modern constitutional system. That shift matters enormously because personal popularity rises and falls. Structural reform moves differently. Once institutions start debating structure, the discussion can continue regardless of who happens to be making headlines that week. And then there is Prince William, the figure whose name keeps surfacing whenever people speculate about the future. Officially, silence. Always silence. No dramatic statements. No public attacks. No interviews explaining his position. Yet somehow that silence has become one of the loudest elements of the entire story. Because many observers believe William understands something Harry never fully appreciated. Institutions survive by thinking decades ahead. Individuals often think months ahead. That difference changes everything. While headlines focus on today's controversy, future kings are forced to think about tomorrow's monarchy. What will it look like? What boundaries will exist? What precedents will remain? Those questions reportedly dominate private conversations far more than personal grievances ever could. And if a secret Westminster arrangement truly exists, some royal watchers believe its significance extends far beyond Harry and Meghan themselves. It becomes a blueprint, a precedent, a signal, a declaration about where modern monarchy intends to go next. That possibility is what makes the situation feel explosive. Because once a precedent is established, it rarely stays isolated. It influences everything everything that follows. Suddenly, the Sussex story stops being just another royal feud. It becomes part of a larger transformation unfolding behind the scenes. For King Charles, the entire situation reportedly creates an impossible dilemma. Every direction contains risk. Defend family too aggressively and critics complain about favoritism. Stay distant and critics accuse him of abandonment. Intervene politically and constitutional questions emerge. Remain passive and others define the future without him. It's a trap with no comfortable exit. And while those pressures continue building, the machinery of Westminster allegedly keeps moving forward, quietly, methodically, without emotion, without sentiment, without concern for old family wounds. That is what makes political momentum so frightening. It doesn't care about reconciliation. It doesn't care about forgiveness. It only cares about numbers, votes, support, outcomes, which brings us back to the rumor that started everything, the alleged secret deal. If it exists, Harry and Meghan's greatest challenge may not be fighting a public battle. It may be discovering that the battle was already moving long before they realized it had begun. And that possibility explains why so many royal insiders are watching Westminster more closely than Buckingham Palace right now. Because the next chapter of the Sussex saga may not be written by television interviews, podcasts, documentaries, or palace statements. It may be written inside quiet meeting rooms where deals are made, alliances are formed, and futures are decided long before the public ever hears about them. If those whispers prove true, Harry and Meghan may soon discover that the institution they thought they left behind never actually stopped shaping their destiny. It simply changed the rules of the game. And by the time they realize the rules had changed, the outcome may already have been moving toward them from the shadows all along.